What Ike Allen and Andy Anderson have created at Avaya is what the world needs.
Hello, Avaya family. I'm Andy Anderson. My partner Ike Allen and I are teachers, mentors, and the co-owners of Avaya University. Avaya is the creator of over 1,000 books, films, courses, teachings, and other supportive resources. Thank you so much for joining us. Our fellow teachers, Anna Forrest and Jose Calarco, are back with us today to talk about overcoming codependency and people-pleasing. Anna has been changing people's lives for over 45 years. She is an internationally recognized pioneer in yoga and emotional healing. She is the creatrix of Forrest Yoga, a mystic, visionary, philanthropist, author, and medicine woman. Jose joined forces with Anna in 2014 and brings a long history of shamanism and healing into Forrest Yoga events. Jose's experience as a musician, medicine man, and director of Descendants Aboriginal Dance Theater spans more than 30 years. Welcome back to Avaya, you two.
Thanks, Andy.
Thank you, Andy. Great introduction. The good start.
Well, great people, so I can make the great introduction. Well, I'm so glad you're back, and I'm so excited you wanted to talk about this topic today. So, what is your interpretation of codependency? What does that mean to you?
Well, codependency is a big word. Like you have physical codependency, emotional codependency, mentally and spiritually. And like coming from an indigenous background of the world's oldest culture, 60,000 years, the Aboriginal people of Australia, codependency is deeply ingrained into the human race. And it has been ever since tribalism begun, when we had to depend on each other for food, shelter, and survival. So it's a big thing. And in modern day, codependency has become something corrupt, like with communism, socialism, and collectivism, where the authority wants us to become dependent on the state, and also religion wants you to become codependent, on a spiritual standpoint. So there was a time in tribalism where codependency was a good thing and not an unhealthy thing, where we depended on each other for someone was the water collector, someone was the hunter, someone was the food gatherer, and we had a really good lifestyle until the invaders came in. And once the invaders came in, our codependency on food, power, and all these things from the conquerors became an unhealthy thing. So codependency is deeply ingrained into humans. And actually now it's got to the stage where individualism, you become an enemy of the state with individualism, or it's seen as a selfish thing, individualism. So that's a little bit of history about codependency. I'm sure Anna Forrest has something to add to that.
I always do.
Yay.
So how I like to look at codependence and many of the things that we consider are problems, like addiction. Addiction is a big problem, right? But if you can take the being that is so deeply focused on that addiction and turn it into a spiritual focus, or turn it into your mission in life, then that need to grab onto something can be used in a good medicine way. And I feel the same about codependence. Like it has its place in balance. So I also see people that are codependent have a higher quotient of empathy. And empathy can make your life hell, or it can add incredible gifts depending on how you work with it. So it's like getting on a horse that has no manners. It can run you into a tree, or you can go for the ride of your life once you learn how to ride the horse and not just be taken by it. So for example, as a codependent person, the codependent person has a tendency to stay hyper vigilant and alert to what another's feelings are. Well, that's another definition of empathy. So what the codependent person needs to do is to care enough to individuate from that. So I may feel Andy's feelings, your upset, your happiness, whatever it is, And then it's my responsibility to step back. It's like, okay, now what am I feeling in this situation? So that starts to balance the empathic person or the codependent person, not making your feelings more important than mine. And this is a really interesting power play, because many of us, when we slide into being codependent, we become sacrificial whores. We sacrifice our life for another, not out of great nobility, but because our life doesn't matter. And that is the incorrect and dishonorable way of living. It is dishonoring the gift of our life that the sacred ones gave us. So to take that on and start to learn to honor it, one is recognize, I have the ability to feel you. How amazing. And then I need to step back and honor feeling my own feelings. And this is the way to turn that codependent imbalance into something of great beauty.
I love that. That's so key, to not just downplay or think of the trait of being empathetic or being able to feel someone else's feelings or be really sensitive to the moods of others around us. To embrace that for all the great things that it brings us as well, and yet at the same time, yes, create that balance. What about people pleasing? Where do you think people pleasing is I would say, kind of symptom or trait of codependency? But if we're just looking at people pleasing, where do you think that comes from? Where does it originate from?
Well, look, we have many different types of relationships in our life. We have the romantic relationships, business relationships, work relationships, family relationships. And in the end, most of those relationships will wither away and die. So one thing we need to ensure is the relationship with ourself is the most important one that we'll ever have. Now, people pleasing, it's just you just got to look at social media. That is the people pleasing that goes on in social media is absolute rubbish. We know several people who now are codependent on social media for happiness. So likes turns, someone does a post for likes, and their happiness now depends on their posts. And this is a very serious psychological problem that has come out of social media. So people have become dependent more on that than reality of their life. So, in the end, the relationship with yourself is going to be the most important way to step out of people pleasing and codependency. And that will come with time management, what you do over the course of the day. If you're spending your time on social media and all this nonsense, then and using it incorrectly, then you are just going to become more and more psychologically addicted to this stuff. So Anna and I make sure that each day time management takes us away from the ego's little, narcissistic playground. So we make sure that every day encapsulates business, yoga, healthy vegan food, and also music, song, prayer. And we always stick to those principles. As we say, each day we've got to move the body, still the mind, express the emotions, and nurture the spirit. Anna and I depend on each other greatly, but it's not an unhealthy codependency. It's a real evolving dependency on one another.
Like an interdependency.
Yeah.
So I have lots of thoughts about this. I was very intrigued that this is what you chose to talk about today, and I think it's a great topic. So people pleasing. I also see, like Jose was talking about traditionally, like way back in the tribal time, I see people pleasing as a coping mechanism for being a social lubricant in the tribe. So there is a place for this. Out of balance, it creates all sort of problems. In balance, it works well. Like, for instance, if I know doing something for Jose is going to please him, as my beloved, someone who is like the most important person in my life, I'll do those things because it gives me pleasure to see him light up.
Yeah.
And I love doing that. Is it at the exclusion of myself? Oh, hell no. No. And he also does things for me because it pleases him. And we work together on this business because it pleases us.
Yeah. We never rely on outside forces to provide our happiness. We make sure that our happiness is contained together. So while many people we know and we treat in our yoga room always rely on outside forces and people pleasing for their happiness, at the end of the day, we know that likes don't keep you warm at night. Likes don't pay the bills. likes, likes don't make you happy at all. Although they do seem to make some people happy, being on social media, but it's very temporary and very superficial happiness.
It's kind of like eating junk food and expecting to get nourished. It fools you. You feel like you're full, but you actually just ate poison.
Yeah.
It's sort of like that. So with this pleasing thing, I feel it's really important for us to shift our priorities in many ways. But one of them being on this aspect of relationship. Like, this is the planet of relationship. This is our learning for being on Earth. Everything is in interdependence with another in this web of life. So I feel that we need to take more responsibility for our relationship with our spirit and learn how to embody spirit. And then no matter what we're doing, whether we're making love with another person or we're teaching yoga or we're feeding our child or whatever it is that we're doing, as an embodied spirit, our very presence becomes a gift in the world. As a person taking responsibility for her own evolving, which is part of what we teach, and it's just like the sexiest game ever. It's like, I want to grow. That really gets me excited. And I also want to dig in the things that keep me hidden, shut down, and in muck. So to actually get excited about working on these things, to take responsibility for evolving, is another really big shift. And as teachers, then we love to turn people on to the things that actually worked for us. That is only what we teach. We don't teach other people's words. We teach what works for us. Mm-hmm. And what's true and what's precious for us. And when people get it and they light up, we get really pleased. We get happy about that. And so I was just right before this, I was just having a text conversation with a Buddhist friend of mine who was talking about, withdraw the senses. It's like, I don't agree with using pratyahara, the withdrawal of the senses, as a way of life, because our senses is how we perceive life. So why are you cutting off life? Just learn to use your senses in a good way.
Yeah. But life generally is designed, especially we've toured the world extensively, over 70 countries. And you can see, especially in communist, socialist, and collectivists, that the system really is designed to be codependent. And unfortunately, when you look at the world, that 85% of the world doesn't have food or energy, proper food or energy, then they are codependent. We're very lucky that we have the choice to be an individual, but many people that are living in these conditions without, which is 85% of the world, then they are always in a state of codependency with authority. And government actually wants to create a codependent society, as I found with communism and socialism, which those systems don't work. And the state and authority is forever trying to make us codependent. So this is why Anna and I abolish. We're part of society, but we have nothing to do with it. And certainly our perception from government, media, universities, schools, institutions, medical professions, we have nothing to do with any authority whatsoever. None, zilch. We take care of our life physically, mentally, emotionally, and spiritually, and we do not rely on the state or authority for anything.
So to turn that to our listener, what we encourage is to begin to look at where you are shaped and manipulated into behaving a certain way that is not necessarily serving your spirit or your personal evolution. And just know that when a person puts their evolution into the forefront, they benefit everyone they come in contact with. So it's not about being selfish. It's about focusing on what's your responsibility as a being that's alive right now on this planet in this very uncertain time. That developing yourself, evolving yourself, finding out what are your gifts in the world, and then you give those gifts. Finding out what is your mission, your purpose in incarnating at this time, and fulfilling that you will be a great gift to any who come into contact with you, and you will be fulfilling your own spirit, which should be our primary focus. Mm-hmm. Because a person that is embodying spirit and is fulfilling their spirit does everything else in a much more extraordinary way, and therefore the community benefits.
Yeah, but however, organized religion is always trying to make us spiritually dependent on them as well. As the same goes for politics, with this nonsense of left and right, that, we all get sucked and drawn into the system, and then we become codependent with authority.
So I'll play on that for a moment. So, for example, what we teach and what a lot of our indigenous elders teach is to have a personal relationship with your own spirit, but also to have a personal relationship with Great Spirit.
Yeah.
And it's not someone else's to dictate to you. You may go to a shaman or to a priest or to a whatever to get some understanding. They're supposed to be the wisdom keepers of the tribe. So yes, you go and you get their assistance or their insight, but then that journey and that relationship is our own, and it's very deeply personal. And for so many of us, we have been disconnected from our spirit, and therefore we make crap decisions in every other aspect of our life. And then we lean in a different way in codependent, like being afraid to make the wrong decisions because we've made so many of them, and then we depend on someone else to make the decisions for us, and they end up being really wrong.
Yeah.
And so recognizing, like, okay, what can I learn from what I consider wrong decisions and self-correct?
Yeah. So what happened with our people in Australia, the world's oldest culture, the Aboriginal people, we were assimilated into the mainstream. Now, we had our own ceremony for 60,000 years. This was way before religion, way before yoga, way before philosophy, way before organized communities. So we had our own, and it wasn't an organized religion. It was just our connection to the world and the animals. And somehow this was replaced by Christianity about 250 years ago. So most of our knowledge was lost. And that was, again, to become dependent on the conqueror's ways or authority, whatever way you want to call them, and losing our beautiful spirituality and connection to nature and replacing it with a set of beliefs. And of course, if anyone looks at the word beliefs, they'll see the word LIE in the center of the word.
Yeah. Would you guys be open to also talking about codependency and people pleasing as it relates to yoga and tying that into the conversation? Like what might be benefits of yoga practice, specifically Forrest yoga, if you want to help people through these challenges?
Absolutely. We've designed the yoga system, everything we've just said, and we always look at the big picture and the little picture. We see where the birth of codependency and people pleasing comes from and look at its history, like the history of ceremony, where people first looked up to the sky and said, why are we here? What are we doing here? So Anna and I have co-created. Anna already had the yoga system 40 years ago, but I've come in and added all the shamanistic and elements and musical, all the things that I've learned for the last 35 years and put it into the system. So our 2.5-hour classes are not exercise classes, although you get a good workout as well. They're specially designed, like I said before, to move the body, still the mind, nurture the spirit, and to celebrate the spirit. So our classes are specifically designed for the person to have a sense of hope, their own hope. We are just the teachers, but as that old cliche says, leading the horse to water, but you can't make them drink it. So all our classes and workshops are designed for the person to help themselves.
And we also teach how to set an intent. So every class we teach has an intent, and it could be something like pick an area in your body that needs healing, or let's work with the broken heart, or whatever it is. We set an intent and leave some flexibility as to what exactly the focus is. Like, maybe you pick your area that feels injured or out of balance, and then using the poses, using the breath, using the focus to continue to work on that area so it makes a difference. So teaching people also to make a choice. Like, you could go through grumbling and in a bad mood and all that, or you can recognize, oh, I'm actually in a state of consciousness I'm not liking. What do I need to do to change it? Change your breathing, change your way that you're standing, do something that gets your blood moving. When you quicken the blood, that makes a big difference, and put your focus on something more worthwhile than whatever you're grumbling about.
Yeah. And every class has ceremony, prayer, and music. It's a 2.5-hour spiritual gathering. It is not an exercise class. If you look at Indigenous ceremony, Native American, Australian Aboriginal, wherever you go, you'll see that their ceremonies are about invoking the good energy and the good spirits into the person, and everyone walking away with a spring in their step and a new sense of hope. And that's what our workshops are about. Totally different to mainstream and commercial yoga.
And also helping people have enough care to work on themselves. Like, you matter enough to work on. You are a work of art in progress. And to do what I call a dharma joust, which is to, instead of flinching away from the things that you're ashamed of and your mistakes and where you've done something dreadful, is to actually look at it and ask, well, what did I learn from that? Or what can I have yet to learn from that action, so that, one, I don't repeat it, but two, I become wiser. And then it becomes really tasty. Like, okay, if I'm going after wisdom, what's that going to entail? You know, and to get excited about these sort of things, instead of, when's my next high? When's my next snort of cocaine? When is my next this? When is all this external trying to fill the gaping holes in your soul by all this other poisonous action? It's like, to stop the poisonous action. This is huge. It's like, my friends that are listening, stop poisoning yourself. And then a whole nother world opens up that will please you immensely, but also scare the crap out of you, because it's so much bigger than you've ever conceived. And that is wondrous. I mean, it's why it's called the Great Mystery.
Yeah. So we bring shamanistic principles into each class. And of course, the deeper we go into shamanism, the less people-pleasing and the less codependent we become. And we become like the snake and just shed the layers. The snake sheds its skin 4 times a year, all the unwanted baggage. And this is, we teach the students, what is that unwanted baggage that is? What are those layers of perception and half-truths that they're living by and defending these ridiculous principles? And slowly we show them to shed the skins of illusion, because people love a good illusion and they love to be stuck in that illusion for the rest of their lives. So basically, our classes are a wake-up call. It's not spiritual diabetes and ohms and chants and, spiritual nonsense. We cut straight to the chase. And we are more centered in indigenous ceremony and stuff than more the traditional India. We've taken yoga into new grounds, and I think there is room for yoga to keep evolving into new grounds.
We're doing that.
Yeah.
And like so many of our indigenous people teach, we learn from the animals. So Jose was using snake as an example. And snake, to my Native American medicine people, is called oldest healer. So snake has deep roots in healing. If you look at the AMA, the symbol in medicine, like the American Medical Association medicine, they have a caduceus, which has two snakes on it, and wings, which is an old symbol that was way before the American Medicine Association. That was the staff of Asclepius, the caduceus, which is a symbol for healing. And in yoga, those snakes represent the Ida and Pingala, these two different energies that run through the body. They run up the spinal cord, which is the main energy channel in our body that then enlightens our brain. And when we lose some aspect of that, we become out of balance. And interestingly enough, on the AMA, they have taken away one of those snakes from the symbol, and it's way out of balance now. So with this codependent people pleasing, I think it's so important for people who finally can recognize, oh, that's some of my behavior. Don't shut down. Don't go into shame. Just know that this quality has an honorable place in the web of your life, but it needs to be brought back into balance. So bring it to balance. Don't try to throw it away or shut down like, oh, I'm so bad, I'm codependent. It's like you need to cut all that shit out, because degrading yourself will not get you the evolution you desire. All it does is make you dimmer, smaller, and duller. Who needs that?
Yeah, I love that you keep bringing it back to balance, because absolutely. And just reminding people, because a lot of people who are very codependent tend to go down that shame spiral when they become aware of certain traits or what have you. But absolutely, it is part of who we are. And just to, rebalance things is the key.
For listeners in Europe, and I'm sure your organization is international, we have a foundation teacher training, which is the 200-hour course, which we're offering online to your listeners. We have a 200-hour foundation course in Barcelona, and then we have an advanced teacher training in Athens, Greece. Then we're visiting a whole bunch of, 9 cities in 12 weeks in Europe. And then finally, we're going back to our other home. The USA is one home, to Australia. And there we have a tour of Australia early next year. We have a great online channel. And like Anna has said many times, we don't teach from book knowledge. We just teach from our firsthand experiences. Anna's 40 years in yoga and my 35 years in with the indigenous peoples and shamanism. So we teach from firsthand experiences, because at the end of the day, word knowledge is just a shadow of real knowledge. So Anna and I have been there and done it. And it's not a boast. It's, we have a job to do, and that's to wake people up. And that's what we're doing. And the more you wake a person up, and the more you connect them to their spirit, this nonsense of severe codependency, people pleasing, and this social media garbage, the less we depend on those outside forces.
So I got one more thing to add, as I know we need to wrap this up. is, so instead of being ashamed, like, oh, I'm being codependent, use it as a dharma joust. Get excited, like, oh, here's one of those tangles that has interrupted my life for so long. Now let me take a step back, take a few breaths, and assess, how can I change this interaction right now? Right now. Wow, how exciting.
Yeah, I love that. Well, thank you guys so much. And I want to make sure everyone remembers there's buttons below to everything we just talked about. So you can go check out Anna and Jose's work. Any last insights either of you or both of you want to share before we wrap up?
Like a quote or something?
Whatever you want.
Well, everything you want is on the other side of fear. That's one of my favorite quotes, because, it's not that Anna and I are fearless. We feel the fear, but we live fearlessly.
I love that. How about you, Anna?
One of my basic lines for my life is two, actually. One is evolve or die. The other is, how many times today can I feel love?
I love that.
Challenge to myself.
Oh, awesome. Thank you guys so much. I so appreciate your last insights in this whole conversation and just for doing this with us.
Thanks, Andy, for
Thanks,
having
Andy.
us.
Thank you very much.
Yes, and thank you also to the Avaya students watching or listening right now for showing up for yourself on your own journey today. We will see you all again soon. Take care.
Avaya has changed my life.
Avaya has made me the woman I am today.
Avaya is my home.
Avaya is personal freedom.
Avaya is the reason my life continuously improves.
Let everyone in your life know about Avaya.
Everyone needs to know about this amazing company.
Thank you, Avaya, for appearing in my inbox.
What Ike Allen and Andy Anderson have created at Avaya is what the world needs.